If you have ever tried to convince your students to use their eye line to help them, you know that this is an uphill battle. Part of the reason it is so hard for students to trust us when we tell them that their eye line matters is because it is such a small detail. It is so small and they can't see it in the mirror, right? They can see the line of their arabesque or the line that their port-de-bras is making. They can't see the eye line, especially because once you look in the mirror, you're no longer like using it appropriately. And also, any student that has been on stage understands their eyes are like this big, and the stage is huge, the house is vast. Like intellectually, it doesn't make sense that something so small would have such a large impact, but it does. And actually, biology is part of the reason. Like our brains have evolved to really pay attention to what other people's eyes are doing, whether we know we're doing it or not. Sometimes this is a subconscious thing that's happening, but all humans that have eyesight that is good enough to pick up on other people's eyes, and if I take my contacts out and you stand far enough away, I'm not one of those people, right? But anytime a human can see another human's eyes, whether they are paying attention to them or not, there's a part of our brain that is clocking where that person is looking. The potential for eye line to help us communicate as dancers is really, really big. So today we're going to talk about some ways to help our dancers tap into this superpower, really, that evolution has given them. So the most useful thing, they're all useful. The first thing we're going to talk about is using eye line to communicate the connection between characters in a story. For example, let's look at Swan Lake. If you look at how Odette communicates her connection with Siegfried versus how Odile uses her eye line, those are really, really different. Odette is hesitant at first. She will make eye contact and then look away. She's shy. She's not sure. And then as the pas de deux progresses, the eye contact between the two characters becomes longer. It becomes more meaningful. And some of that has to do with the choreography, obviously. But you can tell the way that the eye contact deepens, the way that it lingers, the way that it becomes less hesitant, that there's this emotional connection there. And then you contrast that with Odile's pas de deux, the Black Swan pas de deux. Odile uses her eye contact with the prince to manipulate him. There's never a hesitation. She does not usually break that eye contact first. She knows that she's magnetic and she savors just having command of his attention, and she releases it when she chooses to. But it's different. Odette will also choose to release the eye contact, but it's because the connection between the two has overwhelmed her, whereas with Odile, she releases it to demonstrate that she can recapture it again. It's very manipulative. It's the same dancer, but using eyeline two different ways builds two very different characters. If your dancers are not preparing to do a piece where they're acting, or some of our dancers just are not going to be cast as the lead role, but we still want them to use eyeline. You also can talk about how eyeline helps extend the illusion of their line. I talk in my book, Artistry Inside Ballet Technique, I talk about the illusion of line. Let me just find it for you. The illusion of line, it starts on page 165. It gets its own chapter. And I never talk about eyeline because that's coming in volume 2, right? But how we use our eyeline, where we place it, how high or how low we're looking, how far into the space we're choosing to focus, it really impacts the illusion of that line. If you want a great example of this, look at the female part of the Tchaikovsky pas de deux. The dancer's lines and the dancer's shape and the dancer's command of the stage space could be completely altered with a different eyeline. It's such a great example. Another technical element that is really, really helped by eyeline is pas de deux work. It is. I don't know that you can do successful pas de deux work without ever making eye contact with your partner. If you know of an example where that is done, will you please leave a comment so that we can all go watch that video? Because if there is partnering work that does not use eyeline as communication points between the partners, that has got to be masterful partnering work. That has to be incredibly difficult. Has to be so hard. Oh my goodness. One of my favorite examples of eyeline between partners in a pas de deux is the Diana and Action pas de deux. I love this example because the two dancers make eye contact, they break eye contact. Sometimes the eye contact is made as characters, where they're connecting as characters. Sometimes it's being made as dancers, as working professionals who are going to make sure that this works. It's also a really great example of how eyeline in pas de deux is not equally used by both partners at the same time consistently. And by that I mean, you'll notice that the female or dancer in the female role spends a lot more time projecting their eyeline out into the audience, where the male dancer or the dancer in the male role will spend a lot more time directing their eyeline to much more technical elements. Promenade is a great example of this. Anytime there is a partnering promenade happening, you do not have both dancers projecting out into the audience. The person doing the traditionally male role, the supporting role, which does not diminish it in any way. If you think that the male dancer doesn't work as hard, you should try doing that part. The person doing the traditionally male role needs to use their eyeline to pay attention to a lot of weight distribution and technical elements and alignment. And the Diana and Action pas de deux shows that as well really clearly. It's a great example for students. Dancers can also use their eyeline to clue the audience into where to look. So, oh my gosh, this is the bane of every party scene rehearsal director's existence, is trying to get those kids to look at the doll, look at the soldier, look at the bear, look at the harlequin, like whatever your interpretation has. Those dancing dolls, it is really hard to get those kids to look at that performance, but we need them to. Because the audience, again, even though our audience knows, hey, that's an accomplished ballet dancer doing a solo, I should watch there. Subconsciously, if we've got a whole bunch of young dancers on that stage looking other places, it's going to draw focus away. Nutcracker has another really good example of this. Sometimes when Sugar Plum does her little embouteils, sometimes the dancer will look down at her feet. So if you can find video examples where one dancer does her embouteils looking out into the audience and the other does them looking down towards her feet, it gives a really different, for lack of a better word, vibe. Yes, I am too old to say vibe. I did it anyway. The dancer who projects out to her audience has a little bit more gravitas, whereas the dancer who looks down at her feet, we notice her feet more and the movement seems crisper. And if you play them side by side in slow motion, it's not usually any crisper. They're both very accomplished, but just the fact that she's looking towards her feet. She doesn't look at them. Because have you ever seen a Sugar Plum do this? No, you have not. But she looks close enough to where her toes will be that the audience looks at them and they appear, the movement appears crisper. This brings us to a really good point. When our dancers direct their gaze downward, whether it's an artistic choice because they want to emphasize footwork, whether it is part of the choreography, like, Giselle, that part is so hard to do. Whenever it's in the choreography or in the artistic interpretation, there is a very specific way to look down in ballet. There is a very clear way, okay? So when a ballet dancer looks down, the neck always stays long, the waist always stays lifted. And we look down from there. You can look down in front of you, but you don't look down where you are. A really great example of how a ballet dancer looks down is the Act 1 trial scene in Christopher Wheeldon's A Winter's Tale. We start our beginning dancers with, the eyes are always up, the eyeline is always lifted, but obviously it isn't. And this trial scene is a great and amazing example of how ballet posture is maintained when the eyeline is intentionally down. And also it provides really great contrasting moments between down and up. It's really hard to get our dancers to believe us, but eyeline needs to be part of their dancing, not just their performing, their classwork as well, because we are building habits. If you have someone who's just really reluctant to believe you, the phrase that I've started falling back on is, we're not just moving, we are programming your audience's attention. And whether you're on stage or in a studio, someone is watching you. And take this superpower that you have, take it, use it, get your audience to look where you want them to look. As I mentioned, eyeline is part of volume 2, which is my upcoming book. No release date yet, but it is one of the 9 elements of artistry that I research, that I teach, that I talk about, that I've integrated into my teaching resources. If you'd like to learn more about it, you can check out my website, geekyballerina.com.